The 7 human teenagers who had nearly died became symbols of the new galactic reality. Junho, now 18, addressed the reformed Galactic Council as Earth's youngest ambassador. His words were simple, but carried the weight of humanity's demonstrated power. Touch our children and we will erase you from existence. The galaxy had learned that humans were unlike any species they had encountered. While other civilizations fought for resources, territory, or ideology, humans fought for their families. The attempted execution of 7 innocent children had triggered a response so disproportionate and absolute that every alien species reconsidered their relationship with humanity. Trade routes were re-established under human oversight. New laws were written protecting all children throughout the galaxy, regardless of species. The massive Vortani territories were distributed among species that had suffered under their rule, with humans keeping only strategic systems for defense. The 7 teenagers returned to normal lives, but their experience had changed them forever. They studied interspecies relations, became ambassadors and peacekeepers, ensuring that what happened to them would never happen to other children. The galaxy was safer, but everyone understood the price of that safety. Absolute respect for human life, especially the innocent. Humanity had announced its presence in the galaxy not through diplomacy or trade, but through the complete annihilation of those who threatened their young. The message was clear to every species across countless stars. Humans would go to any lengths to protect their own, and the galaxy was now their hunting ground. 3 months after the execution attempt on Kepler 442b, the Vortani Empire was dying. Emperor Vorthax stared at the tactical displays in his command center, watching red markers disappear from the galactic map as human forces systematically destroyed everything his species had built over 3,000 years. Each vanishing light represented a lost base, destroyed fleet, or eliminated garrison. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. They did not want territory or tribute, or political concessions. They wanted every Vortani dead, and they pursued this goal with terrifying efficiency. Admiral Kim Young-ho commanded the human fleet that had just finished exterminating the last Vortani forces in the Andromeda sector, leaving 12 star systems completely clear of Imperial presence. The scale of human military preparation shocked every alien species that observed the conflict. While other civilizations had spent decades building diplomatic relationships and trade networks, humanity had been preparing for total war. Their civilian infrastructure was actually a disguised military machine waiting for activation. Factory ships that appeared to manufacture mining equipment were actually producing advanced weapon systems. Colonies that seemed focused on agriculture were training grounds for military forces. Research stations studying distant stars were developing new methods of warfare. Every aspect of human civilization served the greater purpose of species survival general. Park Suman led the assault on the Vortani stronghold at Kepler 186, where over 1 million Imperial soldiers defended the sector's most important supply depot. Her human force numbered only 50,000, but they had been planning this attack for years. Every building in the complex had been mapped, every defensive position identified, every guard rotation memorized. The battle lasted 6 hours, from orbital bombardment that crippled the base's shields to street fighting that cleared every bunker. And tunnel human forces moved with mechanical precision. The defending Vortani fought bravely, but they were facing an enemy that had studied warfare the way scholars study ancient texts. When the shooting stopped, 1 million alien soldiers were dead, and their massive supply depot was reduced to radioactive ash. The humans had lost fewer than 3,000 troops while completely eliminating one of the Empire's most heavily defended positions. The mathematical efficiency of the victory terrified other species watching the conflict, but what truly shocked the galaxy was Earth's industrial capacity. The weapons and ships devastating the Vortani Empire were apparently built during peacetime as standard defense preparations. Human production, Facilities showed no signs of increased activity, suggesting that this level of military output was normal for their civilization. Captain Lee Sang-woo commanded the destroyer Vengeance as it hunted Vortani patrol ships in the Outer Rim territories. His crew had perfected the art of silent killing, appearing from hyperspace long enough to destroy their target, then vanishing before any response could be organized. They had eliminated over 40 enemy vessels without taking a single casualty. Psychological impact on surviving Vortani forces was devastating. Soldiers who had conquered galaxies now lived in constant fear of invisible human predators. Every shadow could hide an enemy ship. Every routine patrol could end in sudden death. The mighty Imperial fleet that had once struck terror throughout known space now jumped at sensor ghosts. Other alien species began choosing sides as the Vortani Empire crumbled. Some tried to remain neutral, but humans made it clear there was no middle ground. Species that had traded with the Empire or provided support found their ships mysteriously disappearing. Message buoys appeared near their colonies with simple warnings: choose humanity or face extinction. The Zenthari Confederation had been Vortani allies for over a century, sharing technology and military intelligence. When their ambassador tried to negotiate continued neutrality, Admiral Park Ji-hyun gave him a list of every Zenthari ship that had aided Imperial forces over the past decade. The ships on that list began exploding within days. Prime Minister Yoon Seo-ah addressed the reformed Galactic Council from Earth's orbital station. Her words were calm and measured, but carried the weight of demonstrated human power. Any species that had supported the Vortani Empire in any way would be held accountable. Neutrality was no longer an option in a galaxy where children faced execution for accidents. The Rigel Alliance tried to broker peace talks, suggesting that enough blood had been spilled to satisfy human honor. But humanity was not fighting for honor. They were fighting for extinction. The attempted murder of 7 innocent teenagers had awakened something primal in the human species that would not rest until every Vortani was dead. Colonel Won Min-hyuk led the final assault on Vortani Prime, the home world of the Empire, where over 50 billion aliens lived in massive cities that spanned entire continents. Instead of invasion, the human fleet simply surrounded the planet and issued an ultimatum. The entire Vortani government and military command would surrender for public execution, or the world would be sterilized. The 7 teenagers who had started this galactic war were finally rescued from Kepler 442b by human marines. Junho hugged his parents through tears of joy, while Minju could not stop shaking as she realized they were finally safe. The twins Hyun-woo and Seung-yeon were taken to medical facilities for treatment of their ordeal, while little Yoonji clung to her mother, refusing to let go. Taiwan and Yuna watched news broadcasts of the war being fought in their names. Both teenagers felt sick, seeing the massive destruction unleashed because of their near execution. Military officials explained that this was about more than revenge. Humanity had learned that peaceful coexistence was impossible with species willing to murder children for accidents. The Vortani Emperor broadcast his surrender to the galaxy 48 hours before the deadline. His proud species would rather face extinction than submit, but they could not bear the thought of their entire world being reduced to ash. Every member of the imperial government and military command would report to human custody for trial and execution. The collapse of the Vortani Empire sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Species that had lived under imperial rule for centuries suddenly found themselves free, but also terrified of what would replace their former masters. Humanity had proven itself capable of destroying any opponent, but what did they want from the galaxy? Trade routes that had operated for millennia shut down, as species feared traveling through space, patrolled by human warships. Colonies that had depended on Vortani protection found themselves defenseless against pirates and raiders. The old order was dead, but the new order was still being written in blood, and Fire Captain Kim Dae-ho brought retribution home to Earth after 8 months of hunting Vortani ships across the galaxy. His crew had destroyed over 60 enemy vessels without losing a single human life. They were heroes of the war, but also examples of how efficiently humans could kill when their families were threatened. 7 teenagers returned to normal lives, but their experience had changed them forever. Junho studied interspecies relations, hoping to prevent future conflicts through better understanding. Minju became a teacher working with alien refugee children who had lost their families in the war. The twins started a foundation to help young survivors of interspecies violence. Little Yoonji, who had faced death at 13, grew up to become one of Earth's most effective diplomats, her childhood trauma-giving. Her unique insight into the costs of intergalactic conflict, Taewon and Yuna both joined the military, determined to protect other children from experiencing what they had endured. The galaxy was learning that humans were unlike any species they had encountered. While other civilizations fought for resources, territory, or ideology, humans fought for their families. The attempted execution of 7 innocent children had triggered a response so absolute and devastating that every alien species reconsidered their relationship with humanity. The old Vortani Empire was gone, but in its place rose something far more dangerous, a humanity that would go to any length to protect their young. The galaxy was safer for children, but everyone understood the price of that safety: absolute respect for human life. The footage reached Earth through quantum communication networks faster than any physical ship could travel. The images of 7 human children with ropes around their necks, standing on an alien gallows, ignited something primal in every person who saw them. It did not matter what country they lived in or what language they spoke. The sight of young Junho protecting his sister, Minju, while little Yoonji cried in terror, spoke to something universal in the human heart. President Chen Martinez was in a meeting with the European Union leaders when her aide burst through the door with a tablet showing the live broadcast. She watched in horror as the platform dropped and the ropes tightened around 7 young necks when the ropes snapped, and the children survived. She felt a moment of relief that was quickly replaced by rage as Vortani soldiers prepared energy weapons for a second attempt. Within minutes, every world leader was receiving the same footage. The Prime Minister of Korea saw his nation's children facing death on an alien world. The President of Brazil watched teenage faces that reminded him of his own grandchildren. The Queen of England saw young people who could have been any British students working summer jobs in space. But it was not just the leaders who were responding. Every human on Earth was seeing the broadcast through news networks, social media, and emergency alert systems. Parents held their own children closer as they watched other parents, children, face execution for an accident. Grandparents wept, seeing young faces that reminded them of their grandchildren. Students around the world saw peers their own age about to die for simply doing their jobs. The United Earth Defense Council called an emergency session that bypassed all normal procedures. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the orbital station above the planet. Some joined virtually, while others took emergency shuttles to attend in person. The debate lasted exactly 17 minutes. Not because there was disagreement, but because 17 minutes was how long it took to coordinate the largest military mobilization in human history. The vote was unanimous. Every single nation on Earth, from the smallest island countries to the largest superpowers, agreed on the response. Any member of the Vortani Empire was now classified as kill on sight throughout all human territory. More shocking to alien observers was Earth's announcement that humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council and declaring total war on the Vortani Empire. Admiral Sarah Kim received her orders while commanding the defense fleet near Mars. Her ships had been conducting routine patrols and training exercises, but within hours, they were racing toward the outer colonies. The admiral had Korean ancestry, and seeing young Junho and Minju facing death made the conflict personal for her. Every human ship captain received similar orders with similar emotional motivation. The alien species throughout the galaxy watched Earth's declaration with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, having achieved faster than light travel only 50 years earlier. They controlled barely 30 star systems compared to the Vortani Empire's 8,000 worlds. Their military was small and their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards. Ambassador Zenthi of the Rigel Confederation sent urgent messages to Earth trying to convince human leaders to reconsider. The Vortani Empire had crushed civilizations far more advanced than humanity species, with better weapons, better ships, and thousands of years of experience in galactic warfare had fallen before Vortani might. Humans seemed to be committing elaborate suicide over 7 children, but Earth had been preparing for this moment since first contact with alien life. Human military doctrine had always assumed eventual conflict with hostile species, while other civilizations pursued peace and cooperation through the Galactic Council. Humans had spent decades studying warfare with the intensity their ancestors once reserved for survival. Every human colony in space was secretly designed as a fortress civilian. Buildings contained hidden weapons, storage areas, emergency bunkers could shelter entire populations for months. Mining operations like the one on Kepler 442b were actually intelligence-gathering posts that monitored alien ship movements. The teenagers working there had been unknowingly part of a larger surveillance network. Every civilian ship in the human fleet carried military-grade weapons disguised as mining equipment or scientific instruments. Cargo vessels could transform into gunships. Within hours, passenger liners contained concealed missile launchers. The merchant marine was actually a reserve navy waiting for activation. Most importantly, every human citizen had received basic combat training as part of mandatory education programs. Children learned to shoot and fight alongside mathematics and literature. Parents knew how to operate military equipment and perform battlefield medicine. The entire human population was essentially a military reserve force. General Park Min-yun commanded the Rapid Response Forces from a secret base in the asteroid belt. His ships had been disguised as mining operations for years, but they were actually the most advanced warships humanity had ever built. Stealth technology borrowed from Earth submarine designs made them nearly invisible to alien sensors. The 7 teenagers held captive on Kepler 442b had no idea they were the spark that ignited human fury across the galaxy. Junho still tried to protect his friends while Minju sang softly to calm little Yoonji. The twins Hyunwoo and Sungyun held hands as they faced what seemed like certain death. Taewon and Yuna tried to comfort each other while alien soldiers prepared to execute them. But time was working in their favor. Every minute the Vortani hesitated was another minute for human forces to mobilize. The failed hanging had bought precious time, and now Earth's declaration was causing confusion in Vortani command structures. They had never faced a species willing to start total war over children. Captain Lee Daeho received his targeting orders while his stealth ship monitored Vortani fleet movements near the Centauri system. His crew of 25 humans had been posing as asteroid miners for 3 years, learning everything about Vortani tactics and technology. Now they would put that knowledge to deadly use. The Vortani Empire controlled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. When species rebelled, the response was always the same. Massive. Fleets would arrive to crush all resistance and execute the rebel leadership. Usually this ended conflicts quickly as other species learned the cost of defying Vortani rule, but humans were different. They did not fight for territory or ideology or resources. Humans fought for family, and 7 human children facing death on an alien gallows had just become the familial responsibility of 8 billion people on Earth. The Vortani commander on Kepler 442b received new orders from the imperial capital. The execution would proceed as planned to demonstrate that Vortani law applied to all species, regardless of Earth's threats. If humans wanted war, they would get it, but only after watching their children die. The energy weapons finished charging and took aim at 7 young humans. The commander raised his arm to give the final signal, but before he could speak, his communication device activated with an urgent priority message: Vortani ships throughout the galaxy were under attack. Human vessels had appeared from nowhere, striking with coordinate precision. The hunt had begun. Captain Kim Dae-ho watched the Vortani supply convoy through the stealth sensors of his ship Retribution. The 3 alien vessels moved slowly through the asteroid field near Rigel, completely unaware they were being stalked. His crew of 25 humans had been tracking these ships for 6 hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vortani had grown complacent after 3,000 years of galactic dominance. Their patrol routes were predictable, their formations loose, and their defenses designed for traditional warfare between large fleets. They expected enemies to announce themselves with honor before engaging in formal battle. The idea of being hunted like prey had never occurred to them. Dae-ho gave silent hand signals to his weapons officer, Corporal Park Yuna, who had trained for this moment her entire adult life. The torpedo tubes were loaded with new human weapons that combined Earth military technology with alien materials harvested from crashed Vortani ships. Over the decades, each warhead contained enough destructive power to crack a small moon. The supply convoy carried food, medical supplies, and replacement parts for Vortani bases throughout the sector. If these ships failed to arrive their destinations, would begin to starve and break down. Dae-ho had chosen this target specifically because destroying it would cause maximum disruption with minimal risk to his crew. At exactly 1400 hours, Retribution opened fire, 6 torpedoes launched simultaneously, from different angles converging on the convoy like invisible death. The first Vortani ship exploded before its sensors even detected the incoming weapons. The second ship had just enough time to sound an alarm before it too was obliterated. The third ship tried to flee but was caught by the final torpedo as it attempted to jump to hyperspace. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 Vortani ships and their crews of over 400 aliens were completely destroyed. No distress signals escaped the attack zone. No survivors remained to report what had happened. The convoy simply vanished from existence, leaving only debris and radiation. Similar scenes were playing out across hundreds of star systems as human forces emerged from hiding places they had prepared for decades. Lieutenant Colonel Shin Min-jae commanded a squadron of fighters disguised as asteroid mining equipment. Her pilots had spent years studying Vortani patrol patterns while pretending to extract minerals from space rocks. When the kill order came through, Min-jae's squadron struck a Vortani destroyer that was conducting routine inspections near the Tau Ceti system. The alien ship never saw the attack coming. Human fighters swarmed from multiple asteroids, firing advanced plasma weapons that tore through Vortani armor like paper. The destroyer was reduced to scrap metal in minutes. Major Won Tae-hyun led ground forces on the colony world of New Geneva, where Vortani administrators supervised local mining operations. His soldiers had infiltrated the planet as civilian workers over a period of months, learning the layout of every Vortani facility and the daily routines of every alien official. The assault began at dawn with coordinated strikes on communication centers, power plants, and weapons depots. Vortani soldiers found themselves cut off from command, isolated without power, and facing human fighters who knew the terrain perfectly. By sunset, every Vortani on the planet was dead, their bases destroyed, and their records captured. But the most terrifying aspect of the human offensive was not the precision of individual attacks, but the sheer scope of the operation. Human forces seemed to know the location of Every Vortani ship base and patrol route throughout the galaxy strikes were happening simultaneously across thousands of light years with perfect timing and coordination. The Vortani High Command tried to understand how humans had acquired such detailed intelligence. Their security systems showed no signs of infiltration. Their communication networks had not been compromised. Yet somehow Earth forces knew exactly where to hit and when to strike for maximum effect. What the aliens did not realize was that human merchant ships, passenger liners, and mining operations had been gathering intelligence for 50 years. Every human civilian in space had been trained to observe and report alien military movements. The data flowed back to Earth through seemingly innocent commercial communications, creating a perfect map of Vortani positions. Colonel Lee Ji-hoon commanded the assault on a major Vortani naval base in the Proxima system. His task force included ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers for years but were actually carriers loaded with human marines. The base defended a critical hyperspace junction, and its destruction would cut Vortani supply lines to dozens of worlds. The attack began with electronic warfare that blinded Vortani sensors and communication systems. Before the aliens could respond, human dropships were landing inside their defensive perimeter. Marines stormed through the base corridors using advanced combat suits that made them faster, stronger, and deadlier than any Vortani soldier. The base commander tried to send a distress signal, but found his communication array destroyed. The weapon systems failed to respond to commands, as human hackers took control of the station's defenses within. Ours, the most heavily defended Vortani installation in the sector, had fallen to a force 1/10 its size. News of the attacks reached Vortani Imperial Command through fragments of intercepted transmissions and ships that failed to report at scheduled times. The pattern was clear. Human forces were conducting a coordinated extermination campaign against anything bearing Vortani colors. No ships were being captured, no bases were being occupied. Everything was simply being destroyed. Emperor Vorthak III had ruled the galaxy for over 2 centuries and had never faced a threat like this. Rebellious species usually attacked obvious targets like major worlds or important trade routes. They fought for territory or independence following predictable military patterns that could be countered with superior force. But humans were fighting for something else entirely. They were not trying to conquer Vortani territory or force political changes. They were hunting Vortani people with the methodical efficiency of pest exterminators. Every alien wearing Imperial colors had become prey in a galaxy-wide hunt. The 7 teenagers still held captive on Kepler. 442b began to notice changes in their guards' behavior. The Vortani soldiers were nervous, constantly checking their communication devices and looking at the sky as if expecting attacks. Junho whispered to his sister that maybe Earth was coming to help them, but he did not dare hope too much. Captain Yang Sung-min received orders to strike the Vortani fleet base at Wolf 359, where over 50 alien warships were stationed for sector patrol duties. His single stealth destroyer would face odds of 50-1, but human tactics were not about fair fights. They were about killing enemies efficiently. Seung-min waited until most of the Vortani fleet was docked for maintenance, then launched a spread of torpedoes at the fueling stations and ammunition storage facilities. The explosions were visible from neighboring star systems. As decades of stored energy and weapons detonated simultaneously, most of the Vortani fleet was destroyed while still in port. The survivors tried to mount a counterattack, but found their sensors jammed and their targeting systems compromised by human electronic warfare. 2 more human ships appeared from hyperspace and began methodically destroying the remaining Vortani vessels. No aliens escaped the system alive within 24 hours of Earth's declaration. Human forces had struck over 300 targets across the galaxy. Every attack followed the same pattern: sudden, overwhelming violence, followed by complete destruction of all Vortani personnel and equipment. The message was clear. Humanity was not interested in prisoners or negotiations. The Vortani Empire, which had ruled through fear for millennia, was learning what it meant to be afraid. The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around the mining equipment as 7 human teenagers worked under the twin suns. The purple sky above them looked peaceful and calm, like any other day on the mining colony. Junho wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided the massive drilling machine deeper into the rocky ground. The 17-year-old boy had been working the mines for 2 years now, ever since his family moved to this distant planet. His younger sister Minju sat nearby sorting through the extracted metals. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her hands moved quickly as she separated the valuable ores from regular rocks. She was only 15, but already one of the best sorters on the entire colony. The twins, Hyunwoo and Sungyun, were operating the conveyor belt system that moved heavy materials from the drill site to the processing center. Both boys were 16 and had been working together so long they barely needed to talk to coordinate their movements. The other side of the work area, 14-year-old Taewon was checking the drill bits for damage. His small hands were perfect for the detailed work of examining the expensive cutting tools. Young Yoonji, who was just 13, worked with the older girl Yuna to monitor the computer systems that controlled all the mining equipment. Yuna was 14 and very smart with technology, while Yoonji was still learning but eager to help. The 7 friends had grown up together on the colony. Their families had all moved here when Earth started expanding into space, looking for rare metals that could only be found on distant worlds. The work was hard, but the pay was good, and the colony felt safe. Most days were quiet and routine, just like any mining operation back on Earth. That morning had started like any other. The teenagers arrived at the work site early, chatting about the movies they watched the night before and complaining about the homework their teachers had given them. The drilling operation was going smoothly, and they had already extracted several tons of valuable metals. The quota for the day would be met easily. Around midday, something strange happened. The drill hit a large underground formation that none of them had seen before on the geological surveys. Instead of normal rock, the formation was made of a dark, crystalline material that sparkled in the sunlight. It was beautiful, but also very hard. Much harder than anything they had drilled through before. Junho made the decision to change the drilling pattern to go around the formation, but the crystal structure was larger than they thought. The drill bit caught on an edge, and there was a loud cracking sound followed by a rumble that shook the ground. Everyone stopped working and looked at each other with worried expressions. The beautiful crystal formation began to collapse. The dark crystals fell inward, creating a large crater where solid ground had been moments before. The teenagers backed away from their equipment as pieces of crystal continued to fall. Some of the larger pieces rolled toward the colony buildings, but stopped harmlessly in the soft red dirt. Taewon was the first to speak, asking if everyone was okay. The others nodded and gathered around the edge of the new crater to look down at the damage. The crystal formation had been completely destroyed, leaving only scattered pieces and empty space where it once stood. Nobody was hurt, and the mining equipment was undamaged. But they all knew this would cause problems with the colony administrators. Minju suggested they should report the incident immediately, but before anyone could respond, the sky began to darken. Large shadows passed over the mining site as massive alien ships descended through the atmosphere. The ships were unlike anything the teenagers had ever seen before, with sharp angular designs and surfaces that seemed to absorb light. The ships landed around the mining site with powerful engines that kicked up enormous clouds of red dust. When the dust settled, the teenagers could see that dozens of alien soldiers were emerging from the vessels. The creatures were tall and covered in chitinous armor that looked like insect shells. Their 4 eyes glowed with an inner light, and their movements were precise and mechanical. Junho immediately stepped in front of the younger children, his protective instincts taking over. He had always been like an older brother to all of them, not just to Minju. These aliens looked dangerous, and he would do whatever it took to keep his friends safe. The other teenagers gathered behind him, forming a small group near the drilling equipment. The alien commander approached them with slow, deliberate steps. Its armor was more elaborate than the soldiers and covered with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light. When it spoke, the words came through a small device attached to its chest that translated the alien language into human speech. The commander announced that they were soldiers of the Vortani Empire and that a sacred monument had been destroyed. The crystal formation the teenagers had accidentally collapsed was apparently a religious site that had been placed on this planet thousands of years ago by the Vortani people. The destruction of such a monument was considered the highest form of blasphemy under Vortani. Law Junho tried to explain that it was an accident, that they had no idea the crystal formation was important to anyone. The geological surveys had shown no signs of artificial construction, and Earth colony administrators would never have approved mining operations near a religious site. The other teenagers nodded and tried to support his explanation, but the Vortani commander was not interested in explanations. Under the ancient laws of their empire, the punishment for destroying a sacred monument was death by hanging regardless of the age of the offenders or whether the act was intentional. The law had been enforced for over 3,000 years across hundreds of worlds, and no exceptions had ever been made. The teenagers looked at each other in shock and terror. Minju grabbed her brother's arm while Yoonji began to cry softly. Yuna put her arm around the younger girl while the twins moved closer together. Taewon stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. More Vortani soldiers surrounded them with energy weapons that crackled with deadly power. The teenagers were ordered to move toward the center of the mining colony where other colonists were being gathered. The adult workers and administrators had also been captured and were being held in the main square. As they walked through the colony, the teenagers could see that the Vortani had taken control of everything. Their ships filled the sky and their soldiers patrolled every street. The few attempts at resistance had been quickly crushed, and now everyone was too terrified to fight back. The Vortani commander announced through loudspeakers that the 7 teenagers would be executed at sunset as an example to the galaxy that Vortani law was absolute. Their deaths would be broadcast across all known worlds to ensure that other species understood the consequences of defiling sacred Vortani monuments. The adults in the colony begged for mercy, explaining that the children were innocent, but the Vortani soldiers remained unmoved. Their empire had ruled through fear and absolute adherence to law for millennia. No amount of pleading would change their decision. As the day wore on, construction began on a gallows in the center of the colony square, using materials taken from the mining equipment. The teenagers were held in a small building under heavy guard, watching through the windows as their execution site took shape. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. Junho tried to stay strong for the others, but inside he felt sick with fear. Not fear for himself, but fear for his sister and friends who would die because of a simple accident while working an honest job. They had done nothing wrong yet. In a few hours, they would all be dead. The galaxy watched through news broadcasts as word of the upcoming executions spread. Most alien species remained silent, knowing that challenging Vortani justice meant facing the wrath of the most powerful empire in known space. But on a distant blue world called Earth, something different was stirring. The sun was setting over Kepler 442b, casting long purple shadows across the mining colony as 7 human teenagers stood on the hastily built gallows. The Vortani soldiers had worked efficiently, using mining equipment and metal beams to construct the execution platform in just a few hours. News crews from across the galaxy had arrived to broadcast the event live to billions of viewers on thousands of worlds. Junho felt the rough rope around his neck scratching against his skin, but he tried not to show fear. The 17-year-old looked at his 6 friends standing beside him on the platform and felt his heart breaking. They were all so young with so much life ahead of them, yet in moments they would all be dead because of an accident that nobody could have prevented. His sister Minju stood next to him trembling but trying to be brave. She had always looked up to her older brother, and even now facing death, she found strength in his presence. The rope around her neck felt heavy, and she could smell the strange metallic scent of the alien equipment that had been used to build their gallows. The twins Hyun-woo and Sung-hyun held hands despite the ropes binding their arms. They had been born together, lived together, and now they would die together. The thought gave them a strange comfort, even as terror filled their hearts. 14-year-old Taewon kept looking at the crowd of colonists who had been forced to watch crying as they saw the young people they had known since childhood about to be murdered. Little Yoonji was crying softly, her 13-year-old mind unable to fully comprehend what was happening to them. She kept thinking about her parents back on Earth and how they would never see her again. Yuna tried to comfort her friend, even though her own voice was shaking with fear. The 14-year-old girl wished she could do anything to save them all. The Vortani commander stood at the edge of the platform speaking through his translator, device to address the galaxy. His 4 eyes glowed as he explained that this execution would serve as a lesson to all species that Vortani sacred law was absolute. No one could destroy their holy monuments without paying the ultimate price regardless of age or intent. Cameras from dozens of news organizations focused on the teenagers broadcasting their final moments to viewers across known space. Most alien species watched in silence, knowing that any protest against Vortani justice could bring the Empire's wrath down upon their own worlds. The Vortani had ruled through fear for 3,000 years, and their military might was legendary. As the moment of execution approached, Junho was given permission to speak his final words. He looked directly into the nearest camera, his young face serious and sad. He said he forgave the Vortani soldiers because they were only following their laws, but he hoped his death would not bring more violence to the galaxy. He asked that people remember him and his friends as children who died trying to help their families by working honest jobs. Minju sang the last song she would ever sing. It was a Korean lullaby their mother used to hum when they were small children back on Earth. Her voice cracked with emotion, but she managed to finish the gentle melody even as tears streamed down her face. The beautiful sound echoed across the mining colony and through the broadcast transmission to billions of listeners. The younger teenagers spoke about their dreams that would never come true. Taewon had wanted to be an engineer like his father Hyun-woo, and Seung-hyun had planned to start their own business together someday. Yoonji had dreamed of becoming a teacher, while Yuna wanted to explore distant planets and discover new worlds. All of those futures were about to end on this alien gallows. The Vortani commander raised his 4 arms, signaling that the time for final words was over. He moved to the lever that would drop the platform, sending 7 young humans to their deaths. The crowd of colonists watched in horror as their children faced execution for an accident that could have happened to anyone. Cameras zoomed in on the teenagers' faces, capturing their final expressions of fear, courage, and love for each other. The galaxy watched as the platform began to move downward. The ropes tightened around 7 young necks as the execution mechanism activated. Everyone held their breath, expecting to witness the death of innocent children. Then something unexpected happened. The ropes snapped simultaneously, all 7 breaking at exactly the same moment. The teenagers dropped safely to the ground, gasping and coughing but alive. The colonists cheered while the Vortani soldiers stared in confusion at the failed execution. What the aliens did not know was that human mining equipment was designed with advanced safety protocols. The ropes they had used were actually emergency cables that contained automatic cutting systems. When excessive weight was detected, the cables would slice themselves to prevent equipment damage or worker injury. It was a safety feature that had just saved 7 lives. The teenagers embraced each other, crying with relief and disbelief. They were alive. When moments before they had accepted death, Junho held his sister close while the others gathered around them in a tight group. The colonists were shouting with joy, but their celebration was premature. The Vortani commander was enraged by what he saw as mockery of Vortani justice. He believed the humans had somehow sabotaged the execution as an insult to his empire. This could not be allowed to stand. The law demanded death, and death there would be. He ordered his soldiers to prepare energy weapons for a more direct execution, but the delay had cost the Vortani something precious: time. The failed hanging had been broadcast live across the galaxy, and the images were already racing through quantum communication networks toward Earth. In the few minutes it had taken to reset for a second execution attempt, billions of humans had seen their children nearly murdered by aliens. The teenagers were dragged back onto the platform this time to face energy weapons instead of ropes. They looked at each other, knowing that this time there would be no miraculous salvation. The Vortani weapons were designed to kill instantly and efficiently. There were no safety protocols that could save them. Now Junho stood in front of the others, one final time trying to shield them with his own body, even though he knew it was useless. The energy weapons began to charge with an ominous humming sound that grew louder as power built up. The Vortani soldiers took aim at the 7 young humans, while their commander prepared to give the final order. But as the weapons reached full charge, something else happened. The Vortani commander received an urgent communication through his helmet device. The message was short, but it made all 4 of his eyes widen in surprise. For the first time since arriving at the colony, he hesitated. Earth had responded to the broadcast. The message was simple and direct. Any member of the Vortani Empire was now classified as kill on sight throughout all human territory. Humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council and declaring total war on the Vortani Empire. 7 children had been enough to awaken something terrifying in the human species. The teenagers did not know what was happening as Vortani soldiers began looking nervously at each other. Their execution was delayed again as commanders tried to understand what Earth's declaration meant. Most alien species in the galaxy dismissed it as empty threats from a primitive world. But deep in space, human ships were already moving.